The average American has less than $1,000 in savings. Oh, man. Over 70% of Americans have less than $1,000 in the bank account. Average. The cost of being average. To save money requires that you set a goal and create an intention and get uncomfortable. Isn't it crazy that your fear of discomfort can actually create a situation where you do the thing that you don't want to do, like you actually end up suffering? Most of us, our decisions don't make sense, but it doesn't make sense to be average. But in order to be average, that means that you have to have a number of decisions on a daily basis that support you being average every day. Whew, man. Paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. Like, how is that comfortable? But then, hold on, if it's about avoiding suffering, okay, I get that. But at some point, you're going to have to pay the tab, which means that you will suffer. So what if you were willing to sweat it out and just shift it up? This is why I'm hosting the masterclass, because then people they'll say, well, how do I set the goal? That's what the masterclass is about. How do I continue with my success after the masterclass? That's what Slay Your Goals is about. $37 a month. The average person won't do it.
If you wanna be about it, come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and your purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Right now. Inspirational perspective.
Let me say this. Let me, a lot of times before you upset people, they say trigger warning. Yeah. Trigger warning. Trigger warning. And let me explain why you're going to be triggered, or likely will be triggered this morning. Because I love you. And I really want to see some significant shift in our community. Now, years ago, when I went through my coaching and leadership development program to become an executive coach, one of the things they told us before we even registered for the course is that this course is designed to trigger you and to push you and to make you uncomfortable, because that is the only way that you grow. And I remember when they shared this with me before I signed up for this year-long journey, and I thought to myself, like, they can't really. They're not going to be able to trigger me like that. I'm not going to get upset, and I don't think there's anything they could say that would make me quit. Well, I was wrong. Because I'll tell you, within a matter of I think by the second or third class, I was in my feelings. And when I look back at what they poked, like where they poked me and how they triggered me, they were 100% correct. I wasn't ready to look there. I wasn't ready to look there. Now, thank God I did, because that's part of what created and made me the man that I am today. And I'm sharing that with you because I'm going to be poking some places and looking some places that folks don't normally like to go. And I'm going to be doing it in a way that is unlike how I've done it in the past on this show. The title of today's topic is the cost of being average. The cost of being average. And let me say this first, because someone will see that title, someone will hear the show and go, oh, I don't have to listen to this one. He's not talking about me. And I want to start the show off with talking about that there's a complex that's called the illusory superiority complex. The illusory superiority complex. And this complex is a cognitive bias that causes people to overestimate their abilities and their performance and their status in comparison to other people. Right? And the average person has this. So most of us have a cognitive bias that actually says that we overestimate our abilities, our performance, and our standing in comparison with other people. In other words, we say to ourselves, I'm better than, I'm good enough. And it's one of the reasons why we don't transform and we don't pursue self-development. It's like, I'm good. Signs of this are overconfidence in one's abilities, skills, and knowledge. And already people are like, oh, yeah, I know somebody like that. And I'm like, no, let's think about ourselves this morning. Like, don't think about other people. Don't think about your spouse. Think about yourself. There's also a tendency to underestimate the ability of other people. And the other way we do it is we judge ourselves as being superior to the average person along multiple dimensions. And the reason this is an illusory superiority complex is because most people are average. That is, by definition, what average means. Matter of fact, let's look up the definition of average. Because in order for something to be average, it means that most people have to be this, right? So average is a number expressing the central or typical value of a set of data. In particular, the mode, median, or the mean, which is calculated by dividing them, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, average. So average means most. That's another way of saying this, okay? And so what is the cost of being like most people? What is the cost of being like most people? Now, before I go there, I want to talk about why most people are average. And I call this the zebra complex. Okay? The zebra complex. Now, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm selling seats for business leaders and executive leaders to go to Uganda with me late March 2024. And this trip is not everyone's cup of tea. Let me be very clear about that, right? This trip is not for everybody. And the reason this trip is not for everybody is because it was not created for the average leader. All right, so that's number one. Now, whether you want to go or not, I'm not making a slight against you. I'm just sharing with you how I created this trip and why I created this trip. But on this trip, we'll be doing safari. And somebody might ask, well, like, what can a leader learn in a safari? Like, how does this work? And by the way, if you're a successful entrepreneur, this is a phenomenal write-off opportunity, right? Development, experience, the whole nine. It's a phenomenal write-off opportunity. But what I'm going to explain to you in terms of the zebra complex are the type of things that you learn on safari. Like, and most people don't realize what they can learn on safari because the average person will never safari. And the average person will never safari because the average person doesn't safari. That's just how it works. And most people want to safari. But the cost is above average, which means that the average person cannot safari. Linnell, what are you getting at? The cost of being average means that most of the experiences that you could have in life, you won't have, and you won't have them because of the zebra complex that these leaders will learn on the leadership tour of Uganda on safari. Now, I'm going to explain the zebra complex in a second. But let me do this. Just in case there's a leader listening, they were like, what's this trip about? Just in case, right? And the cost of this trip is above the average cost of a trip. And so that's why I say it's not for the average person. But as a leader, when was the last time, if you're a leader, if you're a business leader, if you're a small business leader, like when was the last time you were truly moved, like truly inspired? And when was the last time you pushed yourself to make a courageous leadership decision that really scared you? I mean, that really scared you, even when you knew it was the right decision, because often the right decisions are the toughest. And also, when was the last time you created the space as a leader in your leadership to actually get developed with no distractions? Like, think about that. No distractions. None. In a world where the average person is addicted to their distractions, i.e., addicted to the iPhone, addicted to social media scrolling. I was with my cousin last night, and he was having a conversation with me. Gentleman sitting off to the side overheard him. He was like, I deleted all social media off my phone. He said, I feel so much better. He said, I feel so much better. I got so much peace. And the guy was like, as I'm on social media, right? He just scrolled. He's sitting there by himself just scrolling, man, just scrolling, right? Distracted. So when was the last time as a leader you had the opportunity to invest in your leadership development with no distractions? I mean, none. And I'm not talking about for a day. I'm talking about for multiple days. In this case, 10 days. If you can't remember this, that's a problem if you're a leader, right? Because if you can't remember this, this means that you're the average leader. And today we're going to talk about the cost of being average. And one of the things I talked about a few months ago is that only 11% of leaders are effective, which means the average leader is ineffective. The cost of being average. I already told you, like, trigger alert, because I'm just going to give it to you. All right, I'm going to give it to you. The average leader is ineffective, which means that on average, any of you who are following someone's leadership, you're following the leadership of someone who is average. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just believe that most people want to be led by someone they believe is above average. As leaders, the main reason we pause, remain silent, go with the flow, etc., is because of some type of fear. You're a leader. So leaders are supposed to step out in front, right? And again, we're going to talk about the zebra complex in a moment here, like why most of us don't step out in front, right? But leaders are supposed to step out in front, but the average leader doesn't. The average leader will pause when they're like, ooh, I should say something. They'll be like, but what's the consequence if I say this? The average leader will remain silent. The average leader will go with the flow. The average leader would not have the conversation that I'm going to have with you today because it's a trigger alert. I already know there are people who turn off the radios, people who like, I'm never again. I'm done with him. Right? The average leader won't have this conversation with you. And the reason is because of fear. And most of our fears are irrational. Most of our fears are irrational. But we make major decisions based on our fear. And yet these fears influence our leadership decisions. So one of the things I'm going to do with these leaders when we go to Uganda is they have the opportunity to safari, but they also are going to have the opportunity to Gorilla Trek. Why am I taking them to Gorilla Trek? Because the fear of gorillas is statistically irrational. Statistically, the fear of a gorilla is irrational, but the average person is deathly afraid. Oh my, deathly afraid, right? And so I like to put people in experiences that triggers that fear, that if you can stand in that experience, when you get back home and leave, you're going to be different. You're going to be different, right? Experiential transformation. The fear of gorillas is statistically irrational because most of you will meet with a stranger. Hey, how you doing? I want to get to know you a little better, right? It could be at a networking event. You meet me at a Starbucks, you go, yeah, okay, this person seems okay. You are statistically more likely to be in danger with that stranger than you are to be attacked by a gorilla. My goodness. Yeah, I'm going there today. We're going to talk about averages. You are statistically in more danger driving your vehicle than you are gorilla trekking. But most people will say, Linnell, you're nuts. I'm crazy. Or do I happen to have my feet firmly settled on the ground that we call life? And I'm looking at all this in a reasonable way. You get where I'm going? Because most of us are irrational with our fears. So in late March, I'm going to be taking these leaders, a small group of leaders, on this transformational leadership tour of Uganda, where we will confront our irrational leadership fears on an experiential journey through this gorgeous, gorgeous country. I mean, it's absolutely breathtaking. And these leaders will have an opportunity to visit the rare animal sanctuaries, rhino sanctuary, chimpanzee sanctuaries, learn about these animals. Now, why is this for leaders? Like, what can a leader get from that? Like, the impact, the possibility is endless. Why? Because nature is the first and best classroom, period. Period, hands down. These leaders also will have the opportunity to network with each other every night, mastermind dinners, mixing them up. And they'll be able to do different things like safari, etc. One of the things they're going to learn on safari, which is why I brought this up, is the zebra complex. So zebras have stripes, right? We know this. But why does the zebra have stripes? Like, why did the creator give the zebra stripes? Well, one, the stripes actually keep flies and other insects and things like that away from them. Like, for some reason, they're not attracted to it. And so it helps them ward off those type of things, which wards off disease, et cetera, et cetera. But the other thing that the stripes do is it makes it incredibly hard for a predator to lock in on them. So when you think about a zebra's main predator, it's the lion. All right? And this is what you learn on safari. On safari, you will never see a zebra alone. And if you do, like if we're on safari and we see the zebra standing by itself, we stop the Jeep. You know why? Because you're about to witness a hunt. Like that zebra is about to get hunted down. It won't last a day alone. Period. It won't last a day alone. And so zebras, they have these stripes because when the lions are scoping out the herd of zebra, it can't delineate which zebra it wants to lock in on. And the way lions hunt, if you want to be a lion this morning, listen to this, right? If you don't want to be average, listen to how lions function. The way lions hunt is they lock in on their target and they choose one target. That right there, I could end the show. Like, because folks want to be lions, right? I was talking about leadership before. We talked about the eagle versus the turtle versus the snake. Everybody wants to be an eagle, but everybody wants to be a lion too, right? They want to be a legal, like if you put them together, like a eagle, whatever, how you say that, right? It's like, man, if I could just fly and be an eagle and be on the ground and be a lion, that's something. But lions are successful because when they're hunting, they lock in on one target. And what the zebra stripes do is it confuses the lion. Like a lot of us are confused lions, like we don't know what to lock in on. And so we never eat. Right? And so they look to lock in on one target, but because all the zebras look alike, it becomes difficult to hunt zebra. And this is why a herd of zebra won't get attacked from every direction by lions. Because, like, how do we delineate between which zebra we're going to hunt? Now, what do I mean by the zebra complex? This is most humans, the average human has a zebra complex. I am not going to leave the herd. And in order for you to be successful, it requires that you leave the herd. But the average human being, even though they're not a zebra, even though if you leave the herd, you won't get tracked down by a lion, for some reason in the back of our mind, we carry this fear that if I am successful, I'll get picked off, especially in the African American community. Because when you look at what happened to Dr. King, Malcolm X, I can go down the list, right? Medgar Evers, these successful men that led their communities, they got picked off. So then we say to ourselves, and by the way, this is subconscious and subliminal programming. We say to ourselves, ooh, no. You know what? I got to do enough to keep up. But I can't get too far ahead of the pack. Because if I get too far ahead of the pack, they might knock me off, right? And that subconscious thinking is what has us playing small and being average. And there's a cost to that. As a matter of fact, the zebra complex goes so deep that if a researcher goes in and they tag a zebra, like they tag the ear, or they put a mark on the zebra, that zebra cannot be studied. And the reason the zebra can't be studied is because the lions can now distinguish it. And that zebra gets killed off within a matter of days. Just think about that. Just one little difference. And then when you look at us as human beings, where the Creator gave us dominion over the entire planet, we're acting like zebras. Everybody wears the same shoes. Everybody wears the same type of clothes, right? Like everybody same brands, same bags, same, like, you get where I'm going? We're doing what everybody else does. We're average. And there's a cost. There's a cost to being average. I firmly believe that anyone considered capable and average is capable of doing more than average. If they are willing to set and achieve their goals. But we have another problem. And the problem is 90% of goal setters never achieve their goals. The cost of being average. The cost of being average. Why don't they achieve their goals, Linnell? Because as much as they want to be lions, they're not. They can't focus. They can't focus on their target, which is why you're not eating. And you all understand what I mean when I say eat. Like, you get it, right? You're not eating the way you want to. not the way you envision, not the way that I taught you to lay out the vision for your life. You're not eating like that. And there's a cost to that. And the cost is not just to you, but it's to the impact that you're supposed to have. So the other people you're supposed to influence, the other people who you're supposed to move forward as well. There's a cost. There's a cost. Now, there was a time in my life where not only did I know I was average, I knew I was below average. And that really bothered me. And what bothered me most is I didn't know how to move that, like how to move the line. Like, how do you move the line? And one of the reasons I'm so passionate about the goal setting process is because I have found it to be one of the proven ways to move yourself from average and mediocre, because by definition, average is mediocre. I said trigger warning, right? And so by definition, average is mediocre, and nobody really wants to be mediocre. But then at the same time, everybody does. Let me explain. If your true desire was to be above average, you'd be doing something different. If you are obsessed with being above average, with being exceptional, you'd be doing something different. But instead, you're doing what average people do. What do average people do? Well, let's ask AI. So this morning, I'm about to combine two things. I'm going to combine this conversation I've been having with you all about, like, you got to understand artificial intelligence with this whole conversation of the cost of being average. Because I'm going to use ChatGPT this morning to finish off the show. And by the way, like, experts have already said that individuals who are exceptional that use artificial intelligence are basically going to take all the opportunities from the average person. Let me say that again. What experts are currently saying is that individuals who are exceptional, who begin using artificial intelligence to leverage the work that they do, so they already do exceptional work, now they're leveraging artificial intelligence to basically do more of that work, they are going to edge out the average person. There won't be a marketplace for the average person. The cost of being average is about to go way up. And one of the reasons I'm willing to trigger you this morning, one of the reasons I'm willing to basically, at the consequence of you never listening to me again, have a real conversation with you, is because I'm afraid for you. I'm afraid. %40 of adults in North America are obese. 40% obese. Now, that's not the average person, but 40% is knocking on the door. Knocking on the door. When it comes to our physical health, 40%. When it comes to exercise, the average adult does not. The cost of being average. The average adult does not exercise. Well, that's not me. Well, this is based on 30 minutes of exercise 3 days a week. So that 15-minute walk you're taking doesn't count. Right? It doesn't count. The average adult does not exercise. There's a cost to that. There's a cost. But see, here's the thing. I believe that one of the reasons most of us don't understand the cost of being average is because we don't have to pay the bill right away. Let me say that again. I believe most of us don't understand the cost of being average because we don't have to pay the bill right away. The problem is that the tab is going up. The tab is going up. It's like going to the neighborhood bar. Every day you go in. Hey, Ide, how you doing, man? Give me a beer. Ide says, you want me to put it on your tab? Yeah, put it on my tab. All right, man, put it on the tab. It's been a month. When Ide comes with the bill, oh my, I spent that much? Well, you had a beer every day for 30 days. Well, that's a lot. That's a lot. Same thing. All of a sudden you go to the doctor. Well, you know, it looks like you're going to have to take this hypertension pill and blah, blah, blah. Well, what if this happened? That's the cost. As a matter of fact, let's ask ChatGPT about hypertension. How many Americans suffer with high blood pressure? I'm going to ask. How many Americans suffer with high blood pressure? Because I would venture to say that the average adult over the age of 50 has hypertension in the United States of America. And most of them, hold on, it's analyzing. Now I want to I've never had errors on ChatGPT before. Now it wants to give me an error. Let's ask it a different way. And by the way, I'm gonna actually teach you how I'm doing this, right? Because I give ChatGPT prompts, right? So you got to prompt it. And so part of what I'm asking it right now is, what is the percentage of Americans by age that suffer from hypertension or otherwise, let's say otherwise known as high blood pressure. All right, here we go. Let's see what it says. So we're going to get the percentage of Americans by age, okay? And it's analyzing that. But so the doctor comes to me and says, you have hypertension. Most folks take the pill and they keep taking the pill and they don't change their diet. And they're okay with being average on hypertension because they don't understand the costs. What's the cost? Kidney failure. Because of the medicine. That's the cost, right? There is a cost to being average. I'm just looking at one component of one thing. I'm looking at one component of one thing. It's coming back now, starting to type. Woo! Furthermore, a Gallup report from 2023 highlights worsening key physical health factors and metrics. So it's worse than it's ever been. It's spitting it out. It's coming. I was telling me you can't do it by age. I gotta ask specific age. Anyway, I'm gonna keep moving. We're gonna come back to this. But here's another one though. Let's look at this. I already looked this one up. Mental health among young people. Do you know that the average teenage girl is going to, if they go with the mainstream, the average teenage girl in the United States of America is going to suffer in her mental health throughout her high school years and have suicidal thoughts. The average. The average. You got to ask yourself, when you look at the overall cost, Like, what makes us think doing what the mainstream does is okay? What makes us think that having fast food even once a week is okay? Like, what makes us think doing what the average person does day in and day out is okay? To be average means that you will likely die of one of three things: heart disease, respiratory issues, meaning you can't breathe. Like, who wants to go out like that? But see, that's the cost of being average, right? And then, the tab is due. Now I can't breathe. Now, and by the way, this is when people are motivated to do everything they should have been doing throughout life. Heart disease, respiratory issues, and Alzheimer's. Who wants to go out like that? The average person, that's how they're going to go out. Woo, that's heavy. The average person, that's how they're going to go out. Or cancer. One of those four things. That's how they're going to go out. The average person, while living, will earn well beneath their potential. And not only is the average person earning well beneath their potential, and I know it's beneath your potential because it's average, right? And no one listening to the sound of my voice was created to be average. You were created to be unique and serve a purpose. You've been socialized to be average. And there's a cost to that. And by the way, while you're paying the cost, someone else is getting the benefit. Let's be clear. Someone else is getting rich off your averageness. So the average person, while living, will earn beneath their potential and likely live paycheck to paycheck. Average person, paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, in the cycle, average person. There's a cost to that. You know what the cost is? The cost is stress. You know what the cost of stress is? Cortisol. You know what cortisol is? A horrible hormone that makes you grow, that makes you gain weight. What's the cost of cortisol? Heart disease, respiratory issues, cancer. It's a cycle. Man, the way things have been designed in North America is to put the average human being into a death cycle. The cost of being average in North America, typically the consequence is early death. That's the cost of just being average when it comes to your physical health. And the reason early death happens to the average person in the United States of America is because the diet of the average person in America is death. Everything you eat is dead. I hope we getting this. I hope we getting this. That's the cost of being average. The cost of being average in your relationship and your marriage is that 1 and 2 will get divorced. You want to be average? You want to do what the Joneses are doing? Go ahead. You likely won't be together. You likely are going to follow a pattern that actually creates tension in the relationship and creates divorce. 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 50% chance of divorce. The average person that gets into a relationship. The average person will never, ever know their life's purpose. In fact, the majority of people, 98% of people, live and die without knowing their purpose for living. What's the cost of that? The cost of that is that you're average because you never sought it out. So then what else is there to do? there's nothing else pulling you out of the herd. Nothing else that is creating the passion and the desire to leave the perceived safety and security of the herd. Perceived being the main word there, because it's an illusion. I don't know about you guys, but that's a very high cost for living without intention. That's a high cost for not setting goals. That's a high cost for not just slowing down a bit to do what you should do. That's a high cost for not coming to a free masterclass on December 30th. That's a high cost for not reading a 40-page book titled Slay Your Goals. That's free. Nobody wants to be average, but most people are. There's a quote in here, and it says, most people aren't after happiness. Listen to me. The average person is not after happiness. The average person is working to avoid suffering. Hold on. Listen to this. The average person isn't after happiness. You might fool yourself. You might tell yourself, I want to be happy. No, your appetite to reduce your suffering is higher than your appetite for happiness. Think about that. And by the way, this is a psychological truth. This is in psychological journals. So you can try to, because what happens is I say something like this and then, well, that's not me. I'm not that person. But more than likely, for most of us, you're in the average, right? You're in the average bunch, which we don't want to be. And we don't want to be there because of the illusory superiority complex, which basically says that I'm above everybody else. When I compare myself, I'm different from everybody else, but you're not, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't have averages because most people are average. And so if you really take a look at your life, most of us are working really hard to avoid suffering versus creating powerful intentions for happiness and working towards that. The average person is not happy, especially in the United States of America, the happiness index in the United States. See, these are all averages, right? So the happiness index here, that's another question I can ask. But the happiness average here is low. I'll ask in a moment. Keep that one for me. All right? Because ChatGPT, I got it over here churning right now. It's churning. I'm going to put a bunch of questions in. So let's talk about this. Over the break, someone said the survival mechanism. Anybody who's worked with me before, they know. By the way, Ernest, I'm putting all this, every one of these into ChatGPT. We're going to get to it, brother. Every question he's asking on the Facebook page. By the way, you can follow the stream live at facebook.com/Coach Linnell Harris. So, the cost of being average. So, when you think about why we're average, I talked about fear, and fear being one of the greatest motivators for us as human beings. And the average person is dedicated to their comfort. So again, not the pursuit of happiness, but the avoidance of suffering. That's comfort. The avoidance of suffering is comfort, right? Most of us, as long as I can get comfortable, I'm good. So we might say with our mouths, the average person will say with their mouths, I want to be great, or I am great. But let's be clear, the average person has not stepped into greatness. You have the capacity for greatness, but you haven't stepped into greatness, right? Because we're talking about average. And so in order for you to step into greatness, that requires discomfort. It requires discomfort. It requires that you become uncomfortable. But at the core of your comfort zone is fear. And the average human being, almost every thought, every decision is motivated by their fear. Let me give you an example. There's someone right now saying, oh, the master class is on December 30th. Well, how long will it be? Fear-motivated question. I don't want to spend too much time. I'm afraid I might miss out on something. Fear. And comfort. I want to be comfortable. I could be doing something else for those 2 hours that's more comfortable, like scrolling social, like that's comfortable. Or fear of, I would just be wasting another 2 hours going to the master class because subconsciously I know I'm not going to do anything with it. So instead of wasting my time and maybe getting caught on fire and doing something with my life in 2024, instead of that, because I'm afraid I might waste 2 hours, by the way, you're likely going to waste the whole day. The average person is going to waste the whole day in some capacity, right? Instead of but I'm afraid I'm going to waste 2 hours. And so I don't know if I'm going to do that, even if it's free. You can register at slayyourgoals.com, prove me wrong. But so at the core of the comfort zone is fear. But the reason you don't know it's fear is because what surrounds your fears is what we call in coaching your self-defense. And this is your self-defense is how you basically deceive yourself and deceive others. Because you wouldn't get out of bed if all you were your fears. And so you have to deceive yourself and tell yourself it's okay. Right? And so you deceive yourself and tell yourself it's okay to get up and continue working at this job that I've been at for 10 years that I hate and that I don't like the people don't like me. And, it's okay, though. It's going to be okay. You deceive yourself. That's your self-defense. And the reason you're deceiving yourself is because it allows you to remain comfortable. It would be uncomfortable to get a new job. It would be uncomfortable to leave that job. It would be uncomfortable, and so you deceive yourself so you can stay comfortable. Because, like I said, the average person isn't after happiness. The average person is trying to avoid suffering. Even though you're suffering. You can't tell me you're not suffering. The average person is suffering. The average person is suffering in their body. The average person has aches and pains. The average person is uncomfortable. The average person feels bloated. The average person feels unfocused and hazy. The average person. The average person gets winded when they walk. The average person can't run. Not without getting hurt. Not without pulling a hamstring. The average person can't do that. The average person is eating average food. The average person has an average diet, which is why they fall into the average of heart disease, respiratory illness, cancer, and Alzheimer's. And the reason why we remain average is because we don't have to pay the tab right away. And when the tab shows up, often it's too high to pay. And so we become average and become casualties of the things we could have avoided. I got so much on my mind right now. There's so much I want to say. Let me just take my time. So much I want to say. Because my heart is aching, man. It's like how do I reach the people? How do I reach the people? How do I reach them? You have this propensity for going for what will make you feel good in the moment. By the way, this is the map of every human being, including me. This is how we operate. It's not necessarily the truth of it, but it's a model of it, right? A framework for you to think of. So now I'm going for feeling good. Ooh, I got brunch with my girlfriends this afternoon. That'll make me feel better. Take a shower, put on my makeup if I'm a woman, right? Put on my fresh kicks if I'm a guy, right? Spray some cologne on. Hold on. How many showers does the average person take? I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. Because you spraying some of them spraying cologne on top of fun. Let me hurry up. Help us. All right. Then I go out and I engage in conversation I will never remember again with my friends. Mimosas, bacon, all the things that average people eat that will hurt them later, where they got to pay the tab. But I feel good. Then I come home and I go back down because now I got to get up on Monday. So now the rest of my evening is trying to figure out how to avoid the sensation I'm going to feel on Monday morning. So I got to watch something to get rid of that. I got to drink something to get rid of that. I got to smoke something to get rid of that. Right? Average. And all my decisions are based on that. Based on the fear of Monday. But I don't tell myself I'm afraid of Monday. I don't say that. I don't say that. Instead, I deceive myself into saying, well, it's my last day of relaxing, so I get to. And none of it is focused on a long-term intention to recreate your life. It's all about staying in the rat race of time until it just becomes too late. The cost of being average. It's a high cost, man. Like when you really... So then, hold on. And I'm going to a job that, by the way, based on what ChatGPT is saying here, I'm making, if I'm average, and by the way, this is taking in white households too, because if I put African-American households, it drops by about 30,000. But the median household income, the average income, right, even if you're married, is $68,000. $68,703. And if my memory serves me right, it's $42,000 for African Americans. That's average. How? How do you do that? But because everybody else is doing it, it seems okay. And I believe that everybody who's hearing the sound of my voice could break past that average if they set an intention to break past that average. But that means that you might have to separate from the herd. And God knows that's scary. Again, remember, most of our decisions are motivated by fear. By the way, here's the crazy thing about the comfort zone. I'm going to keep going with these averages. Here's the crazy thing about the comfort zone. That the way the comfort zone works, fear in the middle, self-defense on the outside, how we deceive ourselves, then we go for feeling good. Then we have these magical moments, by the way. These moments where it's like, man, and then we live for that. We try to recreate that. You wear the same underwear, you wear the same sweater, you wear the same shoes. Like we try to recreate those things. You know, you ever took somebody to you ever go to a restaurant by yourself or just with your husband or your wife, and you have some phenomenal food? My wife have done this. My wife and I did this from one of my birthday parties. Her and I, we went to a place in Oak Park. Phenomenal food. We thought it was amazing. So I decided to have my friends come out for my birthday party, and it just wasn't that good then. Right? We try to recreate it, and it don't work. But that's what we do as human beings. Like we try to recreate those magical moments, not realizing it's just a magical moment. Let it go. Let it go. But the thing about the comfort zone is that when you go up against the edge of your comfort zone, when you get uncomfortable, you have real physical sensations. Like real physical sensations. The fear is so deep, it has so much control that when you go up against the edge of your comfort zone to confront yourself, to do something intentional, to do something different, you get a physiological response. You start sweating. Your palms get wet. And for many of us, that's enough to slow us down. Lord Jesus, heart started beating. Oh my goodness, I can't. I thought I was. I thought I would do it. I guess not. We allow the physical sensations to slow us down. That's how deeply wired our fears are. And that's what's holding us. If you wonder why so many of us are average, that's what's holding us at average. That's what has us arrested at average. The average American has less than $1,000 in savings. Oh, man. Over 70% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their bank account. Average. The cost of being average. To save money requires that you set a goal and create an intention and get uncomfortable. Isn't it crazy that your fear of discomfort can actually create a situation where you do the thing that you don't want to do, like you actually end up suffering? Most of us, our decisions don't make sense, but it doesn't make sense to be average. But in order to be average, that means that you have to have a number of decisions on a daily basis that support you being average every day. Whew, man. Paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. How is that comfortable? But then, hold on, if it's about avoiding suffering, okay, I get that. But at some point, you're going to have to pay the tab, which means that you will suffer. So what if you were willing to sweat it out and just shift it up? This is why I'm hosting the masterclass, because then people they'll say, well, how do I set the goal? That's what the masterclass is about. How do I continue with my success after the masterclass? That's what Slay Your Goals is about. $37 a month. The average person won't do it. And I'm baffled. I'm personally baffled. I'm baffled. Why? Because I used to be below average. I got kicked out of college. I know what it feels like to be below average. Why? Because the average person has a bachelor's degree. Maybe that's why I work so hard, right? No, I'm sorry. The average person does not have a bachelor's degree, which means if you have a bachelor's degree, you're above average. But for the folks who are above average with bachelor's degrees, I believe that's one of the reasons why the rest of your life is average, because you hung your hat on being above average in your education and you stopped learning. So now your life is average. And it's difficult to distinguish from the person who didn't even get a bachelor's degree. How does that work? The average American, I'm reading this, is generally considered to be unprepared for retirement and have lower savings than what financial experts recommend for a comfortable retirement. The average American. I'm telling you, at some point, the tab is going to come due. At some point, you'll say, oh, I wish I had. So at some point, you got to say, this needs to get handled right now. I don't know how. You don't have to know how. One of the four keys to implementation, one of the four keys to achieving anything is vision. Just set a vision. You don't have to know how. Oh my goodness. The average, I'm reading y'all, the average balance on a retirement account as of 2022 is $23,000, almost $24,000, and it's the lowest in over a decade. The average retirement plan's balance. Hold on. The average retirement plan balance in the United States of America fell to $23,818 in the last decade. Whew. The cost of being average. The cost of being average. The cost of being average. Well, Linnell, you don't understand what happened to me. Linnell, you don't understand what's going on in my life. And what I'm telling you is, look, I don't have to understand, because as of today, you could make a decision to do things differently. But in order to do things differently, you're going to have to be willing to confront your irrational fears. I started the show with that. Human beings have irrational fears. I've been called crazy, man, for a lot of stuff. Look, I've lived my life in a way because I want to address my irrational fears. Do you think the first time I went gorilla trekking, I wasn't afraid? But I knew the fear was irrational. I knew that the drive to the studio this morning was more dangerous than going into the jungle. And so I said, if I can drive every day, then I can go into the jungle. Because I don't want to live my life based on irrational fears. I want to live beyond my fears. If you wonder why I do the things I do, I know that if I get on the mat and spar, they're not going to kill me. Might be bigger than me, but you're not going to kill me. So I get on the mat. I'm a scuba diver. I'm an advanced scuba diver. The first time I jumped in that water, my heart was beating out of my chest. Why? Because I had literally jumped out of my comfort zone. Matter of fact, even before I hit the water, when they strapped the tank on my back, my heart was beating. Physiological response to fear, right? To edging up against my comfort zone. I had never had an oxygen tank on my back. And so I was at the edge of my comfort zone. I had seen oxygen tanks on backs before, but I had never had one on mine. This means you're about to get in the water. I had trained all morning in the pool for it, but now I'm in the ocean. I remember it like it's yesterday, 2010. 2010. They put the tank on my back. I got the goggles on my head. The respirator that I breathe out of, the regulator that I breathe out of, in my hand, holding it tight. This is how I'm going to breathe. Heart beating out of my chest. It said, on the count of 3, you need to fall backwards into the water. Fall backwards? You mean I can't see? Uncomfortable. Linnell, what made you do it? That's crazy. Scuba diving is nuts. Statistically, it's safer than driving. See, I keep, you know what I'm saying? Like, we got all these fears. They're irrational. We won't push ourselves. We won't push. And for me, I'm like, I'm going to push myself in every category that I can push myself, because I will not let fear hold me. 1, 2, 3. First time I didn't go. I tell the truth, first time I didn't go. What's going on, man? You good? No, I'm good. I went like this. Ooh. For those of you watching, you can't see me. I just lean back. They say, hey, man, you got to let go. Radio audience, at what point are you going to let go of your irrational fears that are holding you in mediocrity, that are causing you to live a life of averageness, and it's costing you? And one day the tab is going to come due. When? The second time. 1, 2, 3. That's what it sounds. Any scuba diver understands that noise. That's what it sounds like. You're underwater, bubbles everywhere. Heart beating out of my chest. Dive master looks at me, puts the thumbs down, means submerge. It's time to go deep. It's time to really live. As we went down, I remember the pressure that I felt around my nasal tract, my ears. What they taught me is you swallow, makes it go away. Every 5 feet, new pressure. Swallow again. And this is how it goes in life. You just don't go down right away. Be like, okay, go down 5 feet, swallow, normalize. Go down 5 more feet, swallow, normalize. And the tough part, most people try to do it by themselves. Most people try to create transformational change in their lives by themselves. It's almost impossible. Take it from me, I tried. Believe me, I'm the kind of guy, like a coach. That's how I used to be, a coach, a life coach. Then I hit a wall. It's like, oh, I guess in order for me to go down another 5 feet, I need help. Like when you scuba dive, you can't scuba dive alone. You always have to have someone with you just in case you need help. Why? Because you're immersed in a deep experience. And when you're in a deep experience, you don't do it alone. Almost everywhere in my life, I have help. The average person, though, they're going at this alone. And that's why you're average. That's why you're average. The reason I created, let me be very clear, the reason I created the Slayer Goals membership is because I know that most people don't make above average money, right? Executive coaching is typically for the elite. Now think about this. I really want you all to think about this. Executive coaching, I don't have to sell executive coaching to rich people. They come find me. Let's think about this. I don't have to sell executive coaching to top tier leaders, above average leaders. They come find me. They call me. Hey, Linnell, look, man, I'm in this new EVP role. Lot going on. We got some really big objectives in 2024. And I'm going to need some help. Above average people, you don't even have to, I'm going to need some help. What does your calendar look like for 2024? You got openings? That's how it goes. You got openings? Then you take Slayer Goals, $37 a month, that I created for people who don't have above average incomes. And most folks won't do it. That's cool. I got it. And let me be clear about something. The Slayer Goals membership, in terms of how I make money, is one of the lowest line items in my business. It's not for money. It's for the community. It's for people who don't have above average incomes but want to do above average things. Because the way the system is set up that if you are average, you can't become you can't get out. And so I'm like, hey, let's get people out. And yet and still, it's very difficult to get people to not only become members, but to actually show up. Why? Because of the zebra complex. Because I'm afraid that if I'm actually successful, they might pick me off, Linnell. This is how it works. This is the psychology of the whole thing. So my first dive, I'm in the water. My heart is beating. I'm breathing like this. I can hear it because I got the regulator on. You can hear it in the water. You can hear anything that's close to you. I can hear myself. I'm looking at my oxygen. I can literally see myself breathing through my oxygen on my first dive. I can see it. Why? I'm afraid. I'm afraid. But something happened. I broke a barrier on that dive. Because when I got out that water, I was like, okay, that's how that goes? Huh. Okay. When can I go back? Like something shifted. Now I'm not afraid. For many of us, all it takes is breaking through the wall of initial fear, and you'll never look back. But the hard part is breaking through the first wall. And unfortunately, the average person never breaks through their wall. They never break through. Everybody that's listening, if you intend to elevate your life, I want you to listen to this. Part of it is a bit of my story. So part of what I do, you guys, and I'm actually reading from the advertisement on the masterclass. I'm a coach, a trainer, and I've turned my life into what most people dream about. And I know that. Most people, and by the way, I'm not sharing this in any way to lift myself up. Because again, remember, the same person talking to you is the same person that got kicked out of college, was broke, living in his parents' basement, with no resources, that couldn't figure it out, no purpose, confused, really trying to figure things out. I was below average. 25 years later, after pouring my life into self-development, I have the kind of health that most people dream about. Like physically, I can do the things that people only dream about. I was listening to this podcast. They said the average man can't bench press 135 pounds. I said, you got to be kidding me, right? So even for a strength level, I have the strength that most men think about, they dream about. I'm not going to go through all the things average man, but in terms of health, right? I can run a mile. I can run 2 miles. I could run 3 miles. I'm 47 years old. Average 47-year-old can't just, right now, if we had to run for our lives for 5 miles, I'm good. I'll make it. But I'm not average. Right? Most people say that's exceptional. But I decided to create an exceptional life. It was a decision. How do you maintain that? I do things that the average, like I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. The average person is asleep. The average person is still sleeping. The average person just went to bed maybe 3 or 4 hours ago because they were watching television. I had been asleep well before that. How do I know? Because the average person watches almost 5.5 hours of television a day. How is that possible? How is that possible? But the cost of being average is exceptionalism. To be exceptional. I'm married to an exceptional woman. The average man can't attract a woman. The average man. Like today in the United States of America, the average man is lonely. You got to ask yourself, like, why, if I'm a young man, why aren't women sliding into my DMs? It's because you're average. Exceptional men have choice. I'm talking to men right now. Exceptional men have choice. If you were an exceptional man, you could choose who you're going to marry. That's the cost of being average. I run an exceptional business. The average entrepreneur in the United States of America is only making about $30,000. Average. Average. What is the cost of being average? And here's the thing, I'm pointing out these stats at the same time while I'm giving you the out. Join the masterclass. Go to slayyourgoals.com. Join the masterclass. Become exceptional. But my life is the stuff of dreams because I got intentional. The vehicles I drive, people dream about. I didn't say vehicle, I said vehicles. It's what people dream about. I don't do this often. I don't talk like this. Like the home I live in is the kind of home that people dream about. How did that happen? Exactly what I want to give away for free. When I started working with the coach, at that point, I had used my goal-setting philosophy to create a good life. When I say a good life, an above-average life. I was single by choice, okay? I had choices. I was single by choice. I was making close to over $250,000 a year. I was traveling the world. I spent, to give you an idea, my work budget, travel budget, I had spent over $100,000 that year on travel through my work. I didn't even pay for it. They paid for it. And I flew over 100,000 miles. I was doing exceptional things. And then the creator was like, it's time to leave. And I left because I didn't want to become the average executive. I left because I felt the calling from the creator to go create more, to become exceptional. I remember being in a conversation with my coach about leaving, and just the conversation had my heart beating. Physiological response. That's what the comfort zone does. I was comfortable. I was discussing something uncomfortable. I was drenched in sweat on that coaching call in an air-conditioned office overlooking the Dan Ryan. I used to have a corner office overlooking the Dan Ryan. That's what I left. That's what I was like, it's time to go. I could see all the traffic going into the city from over here. All of them, all the red lights. What is average costing you? In 2016, my wife came to me and she said, I think we were in Mexico, vacationing in an exceptional way. And again, I'm not saying that to boast. I really want to push this, okay? And 1 year after I left corporate America, vacationing in an exceptional way, right? My fear was I would never be able to do that again, by the way, right? My fear was if I leave corporate America, I was going to be broke. It was irrational, right? Because when you have a wealth frequency, you can't be broke, right? That's some of the things that we talk about in Slay Your Goals. Like when your frequency is right, then you just can't be, if you understand that. My wife and I on vacation, she said, baby, we're so blessed. How do we get other people here? How do we do it? So what are you thinking about? She's like, I think you should teach people how to set goals, but don't charge them. Do it for free. Take them through everything that you know in a matter of 2 hours and do it for free. At the end of every year to set them up so maybe somebody will set a goal in a way that they can actually sustain it and it changes their lives. I think that's what we should do. We started that in 2016. 7 years later, here we are. And all I'm saying is sign up for free. Like, don't allow average, don't become a casualty of average, because the cost is too high. The cost is too high. Shortly after that, it clicked for me. And that's when I created Slay Your Goals. And the reason I created Slay Your Goals is because I got tired of people in my community calling me and they couldn't afford the coaching one-on-one. And I said to myself, what if I created a community and I coached in that community and the price was subsidized based on the price for the community? Then I could coach and people could have access to what the elite have access to at an affordable price. And when I did this, coaches were upset. What are you doing? Not supposed to do that. They had lots of reasons why I couldn't do it. And if I were going to be an average coach, I wouldn't have. Okay? I said, no. You don't understand. You don't understand what's going on in my community. You don't understand the passion I have for my community. This is why I'm creating this membership, so people have an opportunity and a path for creating a life that is above average and exceptional. Because I understand how difficult it is to break through the mold of average. I'm going to close with this: the keys to accomplishing anything. This morning, you can be successful if you have an imagination. That's all it requires. If you have imagination, that is the first key to accomplishing anything that you want to accomplish. I could keep going through the stats. I could keep talking about what average is and the cost of average. I think you got the point of that. But now, it's like, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to set some powerful intentions in 2024? Are you going to create some powerful intentions moving into the next year that takes you out of the zone, out of the big, large road of average? The average person in America is going nowhere fast. Are you going to be with them? And by the way, that's the road of perceived safety. That's the scary part. That's the road of what most people believe is security. And all it takes, the very first step, is if you can just imagine a different life. Right? Because most of us will be like, well, how am I going to do it? How am I going to implement this, Linnell? What does all this look like? All it takes is that you can imagine it. And if you can imagine it, I can work with that. Like, if you can just imagine it. But here's the scary part. Here's the scary part. Most of us, the average person, is so distracted they won't have time to imagine their own lives. Woo-wee. Like, the average person is so distracted by everything else around them that they won't even create the space and time to imagine the possibilities of their own lives. Why? Because you've been programmed to be that way. That's not what the Creator intended. That's not how the Creator intended for it to go. You've been programmed. The programming started in school. I've already shared that Rockefeller went to Congress, said, I think that we need to create a Department of Education because the way people are learning, well, there'll be too much competition for my ancestors. I mean, not for my ancestors, for my descendants. Right? I want to make sure they stay rich. He didn't say this out loud, but I'm telling you, this is why he did it. Right? So then the United States of America said, well, who has the best education system for putting people in warehouses and the military? And Prussia. Prussia had the best education. Like Prussia, which doesn't exist today. Interesting, right? Because of how they educated their people. America's on a dark path. How they educated their people doesn't even exist today. But we took that education system and implemented it here. So it could turn out factory workers and soldiers. But what do both have in common? They take orders. Most people can't imagine what life would look like for themselves because they've been programmed in those institutions. And they've become so common with taking orders that if I don't tell you what your life should look like, you don't know how to create it. Now, somebody right now is like, I don't know, I reject that. And I'm telling you right now that you're living a life based on what people have told your life to look like, because what do you think television programming is? It is a television program. A program that is programming you and telling you how to live your life. The sitcoms, the houses they live in the sitcoms are the houses you desire. The cars they drive in the sitcoms are the cars you desire. The clothes they wear in the sitcoms are the clothes that you desire. The schools they go to in the sitcoms are the schools you desire. The jobs they have in the sitcoms are the jobs that you desire. I could keep going. And they're literally teaching you how to be average. So you go from K through 12 being taught how to be average, only to graduate and go to college and get taught more of how to be average. And then you come out and you get an average job and go home and watch average television where the average programming continues. And most people will do this for a lifetime and end up on their deathbed when it's time to pay the tab for the average way of being and ask themselves, how did this happen? And live full of regret. And all I'm asking you this morning, all I'm asking you is to break the trend. Do something scary. Maybe it's just showing up to the masterclass. Maybe it's just becoming a Slay Your Goals member. It could be a waste of money for 2024. Maybe. But at the most, you know how much money they would waste? Less than $450. That's it. For taking a chance. If you stayed in for 1 year and showed up for 1 year for yourself. But you know where that $450 will likely go? Wherever the programming tells you. Wherever the commercials tell you. And it's sad. And the question is, are you willing to pay the cost for being average? And if not, will you take the action necessary to be exceptional? I promise I love you. I promise I care. I promise I want you to be blessed this morning. And there's no other way for me to share it. Hey, my inspired peoples. Linnell Harris here, certified ontological coach and trainer. I'm so excited that you're watching the channel. By the way, did you know you can catch the show live at 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. every Sunday morning? You can. All you have to do is go to my Facebook stream, Coach Linnell Harris, catch the stream live, or you can listen to the radio show via iHeart at WVON 1690 AM. But since you're here, if you love the content, I ask that you share it, like this particular video, and subscribe to the channel. I hope you're having a great day.